And it's that same inventory almost of what you're doing with, say, like for you and I, like, am I surfing or am I feeding myself? How do I feel after? Do I feel, I feel energized, or do I feel like drained?
Yes.
Same in these relationships now, external from yourself.
Yeah.
Do I do that inventory and go, oh, when I'm around you, let's say, I feel filled up. I feel excited. I feel good. I feel like that with most of my clients too. I leave and I'm like, oh my God, it's such a good day. I feel so awesome. But there's the occasional person that you're with.
Yeah.
It could be a friend. It could be acquaintance. It could be a neighbor. It could be anybody where you're like, oh, I leave and I'm like, oh, I feel tired. I feel drained.
Yeah.
Like take that moment to take that inventory. How do I feel before and after I'm with you and during? Welcome to the Relationship Psychologist Podcast, a place where we dive deep into all things relationships. I'm Dayna Mullen.
And I'm Alicia Hinger, and we are soul sisters, besties, and psychologists. We're on a mission to change the culture of relationships.
Each week, we will discuss our expertise in the field of psychology, interview experts, spiritual leaders, and real people. Our goal in every episode is to give our listeners tools to implement in their lives today.
This podcast is not therapy, nor should it be a substitute for therapy, but instead we're here to motivate, support, and guide your conscious journey in this life.
The best way to support our podcast is to subscribe and give it a 5-star review.
Thanks so much for joining. Let's dive in.
Well, hello.
Hi.
Good to be back.
Right? We're like so smiley right now, but you've had a hard day.
Yeah,
It's been a hard fucking week.
Yeah, it's been a long couple days for sure.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, let's just can we give them a Cole's notes?
Yeah,
You okay
sure.
with
Give them a
that?
Cole's notes. Yeah.
Cole's
you go
notes
ahead.
of some people that obviously lots of your people know already that your dad's been ill for a while, but he's like this powerful, stubborn, resilient human. He's just, if you just know him, you just know that's who he is. And he took a turn kind of on Saturday for the worse. And then
a left turn back to on the good path
like I
again.
literally went there today to like say my goodbyes. And I thought he was going to be not talking and kind of comatose. And he like, hello.
Perked right back up. Yeah, you know what? I mean, we joke that we're like soul sisters and stuff, but like my dad loves
We
you.
really
yeah,
are.
I know. But he like loves you like a daughter. And so it's like, it's crazy how much he perked up when you came in. So it's like,
what a gift he is. Just like, so I mean, yeah, we have this energy right now to do this podcast so late because your dad just like gave me energy. I'm just like, he's a gift. And your mom's a gift too. Gloria.
I know.
I love you too.
And it's ironic. I mean, we're talking about obviously relationships again today. Yes. It's what we do, but like really taking an inventory of the relationships that you have in your life right now and which ones are growing with you and which ones maybe are being toxic or draining or pulling in your life. And not that we're talking about people, like we're not saying some people are bad or draining or energy suckers, but sometimes you're in disalignment in life with people in relationships. And you're like, we're not growing in the same way and we don't live life in the same way.
Yeah.
Really.
You know, I was talking to Winter the other day, my daughter, and I was saying, talking about your dad and how I'm like, it's just not fair that the good ones kind of, get sick young or die young, whatever that cliche is.
Mm-hmm.
And, she said some really sweet words about, they're needed elsewhere, of course, whatever. But really, I just was Googling like some research on like personalities that get sick earlier or have, mortality rates younger. And it's kind of true. So like the personalities I was looking at were people that are pleasers, that have less boundaries. I think even Gabor Mate talked about this actually, one of his podcasts a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was studying ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Is that the right one?
Yeah,
and these people that don't have any boundaries and that are constantly pleasing others and putting everybody else above themselves get that disease most often, but also get cardiovascular disease.
Wow.
It says. And the people that are like perfectionistic, type A, me, go, cancers. Surprise, surprise.
Wow.
I know. So this topic today around having boundaries and knowing who your people are and how it's nurturing you and how you're nurturing them is actually not just a fluff topic. This is really important stuff for
huge.
Health.
It is. It is. And you're right, Alicia, this like, I feel like we don't focus enough about like the starting point kind of in the middle of a circle is like that self, right? Yeah. Like who am I in relationship to myself? How am I taking care of myself? And where are my strengths and weaknesses in my self-care and in my relationship boundaries?
Yeah.
Like how do I am I a giver? Am I a pleaser?
Right, so the
Or
balancing.
am I a taker?
Right.
And not that any of these are good or bad. Like there's no judgment on this. It's just like a self-awareness of, okay, this is where I'm at right now. And do I actively choose this? Do I consciously choose to keep being this way? Because I'm getting sick. I'm getting more stressed out. I'm feeling drained. I love this person, but every time I'm around them, I feel drained. So, okay, let me just slow down and be like, is this relationship feeding me or is it pulling from me? And do I need to make some changes?
Yeah. So let's invite, this is an invite then for our listeners to take inventory.
Yes.
This is an inventory of relationships and how you do relationship, why you're in relationship, like Stan says, what are we doing and why?
Yes.
What's the why in this relationship and how's it serving you? How are you serving them? So I like your visual you kind of drew on your page here, which is kind of what we draw with our clients lots. It's just like you think of a dartboard or like any kind of a board, I suppose, that has like the three, circles. So the center being self. Yeah. So the self is, values. Like, what do I value? What do I stand for? Right? Do I have integrity to stand for what I say I stand for? It's not selective. It's right. And do I do the kind of like Leanna's like fill your cup stuff? Like, do I do the mind platter to make sure self is full? Or am I just depleting self-abandoning to leave my center and please others?
Yeah. Yes.
So it's a good place to start.
Yeah, it is a good place to start. And just that self, I think it's another way to kind of take inventory of that is how am I, like, first off, just what am I doing that fills me up? Like what is my own self-care? Some people call it self-love. But I think of it as a bucket often. Like I'll say this to my clients also, I'll be like, if you have a bucket, like where's your bucket at? Just think of it. Is it full or is it empty? And people are always like empty. Right? It's fully empty. It's like, okay, well, let's start there then. Yeah. What will fill your bucket? Like what will fill that? Well, I want to take more baths or I've always wanted to take dancing lessons, like whatever it is, like, how do you fill that relationship with yourself? I want to go to church. I want to start whatever it is. Yeah.
I had a client today, actually, and that was our discussion today. We just spiked my memory and we used a vehicle because that's how it came up. And so it was like, what are you putting into this vehicle that is you? This is a vehicle that is you. And what are you doing? What kind of gas are you putting in it, first of all? And is it running on fumes? And she was like, it's running on fumes. But her issue was that she was like, but I outsource. I'm always looking for others to put gas in my tank. Since I was a little kid, that was her, there's some stuff there, obviously, right? So part of this is knowing your triggers and knowing your whys and what you do. And like, oh, I recognize I'm looking for others to fill my tank. Then I'm always at the mercy of my environment. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty depleted, vulnerable, unsafe place to be most time, right? Yeah. So then to do the whole switch of like, we went back into her history and figured out where that came from and did some parts work. And then she was like, oh, I can fill my own tank, which was a brand new concept. And so how many of us actually don't think about that and are looking for our environment to fill our tank? Yes. Or filling it with like crap. Yes. With social media, with the next big thing, if I look this way, feel this way, do this thing, get this money, that's all external stuff. Yeah, to fill my tank. To really take inventory of the center and be like, actually take a hot minute and actually ask yourself, what does fill my tank? What are the parts of me? Like I think of my 4 parts that are my, spiritual, mental, physical, emotional. And in emotional, I put relational. It's that part of that bucket, which is not always a good visual probably, but that's where I put it. Mm-hmm. And so what am I doing to fill those quadrants of my life? And they're depleted. And what does each quadrant need differently? Yes. Because they're only different things. Yeah. I love that. My spiritual needs different than my physical needs different than my relational. Yes. And I think, and that's a good visual with self. And I think you can also, as we're expanding on this, you can do the buckets how am I filling my bucket with my kids or my parents or my spouse? Yeah. But it is really slowing down and taking an inventory of what is actually feeding me and what is not. Because sometimes we fill our buckets with things like chocolate, or shopping, TikTok, and once in a while, those things aren't bad. But if those are your go-to, they're probably not. So how do you know the difference? Right? How do you know? So if something is like actually filling you up versus numbing you. Yeah, I know for me, I just do this consciousness thing where I'm like, I notice when I have those urges. So I'm like, oh, like today was some stressful points today. So I was visualizing what I was going to have for dinner. Food. And I was visualizing wanting to go to this boutique. Yes. And I was like, okay, wait a second. Why do I want to do those things? And I remembered, I'm like, well, my mom and I, part of our bonding was shopping. And it didn't even have to always be spending money. It was just, it could be buying cookies, but it could just be like browsing together. So and you and I have connected a lot on that too, right? So I'm like,
it's a connection, and I feel more connected when I do that. When I do it alone, I feel low after. Yeah. So it doesn't fill me up. And food only fills me up when it's with somebody. It doesn't fill me up when it's not. So then I was like, oh, right, I'm just wanting more connection. And so today I could realize that I wanted more connection.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
And so those were kind of the signals for that. So my thing is, if I know if it's working, is after I do the thing, because my husband makes fun of me because we have different languages to fill up our bucket, right? And so he loves watching like anything sports. Like the guy will watch, I mean, obviously NFL is his favorite, but he'll watch like Little League Baseball if it's on TV. Doesn't really, he just loves his sports. So it doesn't fill me up. So I will watch like American Idol or like X Factor. Like I love anything singing and musical. I'm in this girl. I'm like, I'm break front or animal videos or whatever. And at the end, if I'm like, I feel like satisfied and my heart feels full, it worked. So I feel comfort. Yeah. If I'm looking through stuff, like once in a while I'll get with my daughter, look, she's a TikTok. I don't have TikTok. I'm like, oh my God, I'm in her TikTok. I'm like, I just wasted 25 minutes with her. And I'm like, I actually felt numb.
You felt different. Yeah.
I felt better. I felt worse kind of. Yeah. Yes. So that's my cue is like, do I feel better? Then it worked. Yeah. If I feel numb, the same or worse, not doing that again.
Exactly. And I think that's a good lead out even to the next one, which is going to be after you take an inventory of that self, right? Like, how am I taking care of myself? How am I nurturing myself? Am I growing and evolving? Yeah. Or am I actually taking away aspects of myself because I'm putting too much somewhere else? Yeah. So there's self, right? And then we go to it's huge. Yeah. Then we go to the next layer of the circle, which is, these other relationships that are really close to us. They could be your spouse, your best friend. Sometimes it could be a parent. It's whoever is really kind of
your
close.
Your dog, whatever your comfort is. Yeah. You share your stuff with, that you feel safe and secure, nurtured. So the qualities of inventory for the next layer would be those things like, where do I feel safe? Yeah. Where do I feel secure? Where do I feel nurtured? Where do I feel seen, heard, valued? I guess what I'm thinking about this too goes back to like the attachment levels. Yes. So you could Google like Gordon Neufeld attachment levels, like of those senses, those sensory connections, seen, sameness, connection, right? And then down the levels of deepness to like really being deeply known. Yes. So the closer they are to the center, I think the deeper the attachments.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And they're more mutual. They're more collaborative. Yeah. They're based on fairness and justice and equality. So they are, they're fulfilling you. They're helping you grow and evolve. And it's that same inventory almost of what you're doing with, say, like for you and I, like, am I surfing or am I feeding myself? How do I feel after? Do I feel, I feel energized, or do I feel like drained? Yes. Same in these relationships now, external from yourself. Yeah. Do I do that inventory and go, when I'm around you, let's say I feel filled up. I feel excited. I feel good. I feel like that with most of my clients too. I leave and I'm like, oh my God, that's such a good day. I feel so awesome. But there's the occasional person that you're with. Yeah. It could be a friend. It could be acquaintance. It could be a neighbor. It could be anybody where you're like, I leave and I'm like, I feel tired. I feel drained. Yeah. Like take that moment to take that inventory. How do I feel before and after I'm with you and during?
Hard question, but good. It's so important, but it's a hard truth.
It is.
Because then if your answer is, I've noticed a pattern of whenever I'm with that person or in that environment, whatever that is, maybe you're volunteering against your will at teachers, whatever, the student thing or whatever, you're coaching it, whatever, like pause and be like, every time I do that thing, I come home drained and I feel depleted. Yeah. And you got to kind of weigh the thing. I'm doing it for my kid. But at the end of the day, if I'm constantly sucking energy dry without putting it back in, where's my boundary? Yeah. Hard truth of like, do I need to put a boundary there? Sorry, not sorry. No. Yeah. And because it's not worth draining my system. Those are hard. Boundaries are hard, but man, boundaries are love.
Oh yeah.
I love this thing, but I love my health, my sovereignty more.
Yeah. Sorry, not sorry. Boundaries they're sexy. They're awesome. I mean, they really are, because when you put them up, you feel that, like you actually feel a sense.
I'm like, boundaries are so hard.
I feel like I've gotten more addicted to boundaries the more that I put them up, because I'm like,
I love it.
No, I know who I was when I did that. Right. And I don't want to do that anymore. It's kind of like I'm not a smoker, but like if you've smoked in the past and if somebody says to you, do you want to smoke? You don't say, oh no, I'm good. You say, oh, I'm not a smoker. I don't smoke. Like you're very clear about that. Right. That's a boundary. You don't go like, oh no, not right now. It's like, no, that's a really clear boundary. I don't smoke. No, thanks. I'm not interested in that. So I feel like just the more that you do boundaries, the more that they just become very black and white, and they're your guardrails to me in life.
Right.
Right. It's like, this is the lane I'm in. I think of it as a path, actually. I'm like, I'm on a path in life and I want people that are somewhere along that path with me in this next circle, right?
Yeah.
In the circle with me. Yeah. And the next circle, I want people on the same path. If you're on a different path, that's okay.
Totally.
Like that's awesome. You're just going to be on the next layer of the circle, which is okay.
Yeah.
You're just not going to be the core. You're not going to know everything about me. We're not going to be in alignment with all of these things. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But this one is you're energizing me. You're fueling my vision of who I am and what I stand for and what I believe in.
Yeah. I think it's taken me a long time to learn that.
Yeah.
Like as you're talking, I'm like, that's so true. And I love that you say it's sexy. I'm like, I'm going to use that. This is sexy. This is good.
It's so sexy of me to put up a boundary to say, no, I will not do that thing.
Like, I'm not a good boundary person.
Well, you're just too kind. I think that you have
that's not sexy.
No, well, but this part of what makes you is that you would do anything for anyone. And that's
and I put a boundary, people are like, what?
I know.
She said,
well,
no.
Sometimes I feel like I've had to put up a boundary with you around those things. Like when I'm coming to visit you, let's say, when
coming,
I'm always like, okay, Alicia, who's going to be there? Because I don't want to share you. Like I want to spend time with you and I don't want everybody else in that bubble with us. And when they are, I'm like irritated. I'm like, could you go?
Right. That's hard for me for sure. Okay. So I'm not as versed in it. I'm getting better, but I think, think of like relationships that are there to teach us lessons, right? I think relationships in my life that have pushed my boundaries. Like I use my resentment. That's for me, the guide of like, I'm starting to feel resentful.
Okay.
As a guide of like, that's my own shit. That's my own stuff. I need to like put up a boundary, which is hard for me, but the why? Right. Because the quadrant of like my self-care and the things that I value, my values, I stand for. So if I don't do the boundary, I'm actually self-abandoning.
Right.
And I value that more than I value self-abandoning. So, I've had to make some hard boundaries in my life that have been really freaking hard.
Yeah.
I still feel stuff, but actually, truthfully, if I actually think about it right now, as I'm talking about it, when I put those boundaries up, even like recent ones, there is a freedom in there. There is like a self-love of like, there's a part of me that's just like, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what that felt like.
Feel safe inside.
Feel safe, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And I think also one thing that helped me, like, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, I had a client who actually came in who was all on this values kick. And I was like, oh, interesting. I think values are great, but like the way that this client learned from my client really, who this client had said, I've written down my values and this is how I'm going to live according to them. Like every day.
Brilliant.
I know. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to steal this. And so like my husband and I will do this. We do it for sure once a year. We try and do it every 6 months, but I have my values written down on my vision board and how I'm living according to them. And those are boundaries too. It's like, if this is what my integrity, if part of my values is honesty and loyalty, if you're not honest and you're not loyal, I'm not going to be in alignment with you. If you disalign with what I stand for and what I believe in, you're going to be on an outer layer. If you're not positive and generous and living life for excitement and adventure, you're not going to be in that inner layer with me. Yeah.
So I think when I think about that, I think defining those words in, like, I think for me, the boundary issue is like, I value kindness and I value compassion and I value, but to the extent of what? And if actually if I'm bringing kindness outwards rather than inwards first, I'm hypocritical. I need to be kind to give kind. There's a great visual I've used lots with clients over the years that I think is a good one people could steal. It's Brene Brown's. You've ever seen her talk about, it's like the 99U talk, which is at a convention with a creative, artists.
Okay.
Anyway, she talks about how if you literally put in a bubble, like in a circle, all of your values. So here's all the things I value, put a circle around the visual, that's your boundary. And so if you don't, quote unquote, people in your life don't mirror, if you stand for compassion, and then again, define those words.
Yes.
You stand for compassion, honesty, acceptance, integrity, whatever, all the words you want to put, if you stand for freedom, I don't care what your words are. Doesn't matter what if you don't stand for those words, the less you stand for those words, the more I don't care about your opinion of me. It's kind of a good black and white visual of like, and the further you are from those values, the further you are in that circle. So if you stand for judgment and you stand for war or hate or whatever, violence or whatever, you're still in the circle of human tribe, but you're far out of my circle.
Yes.
So really good.
And I like what you were just saying, because it's interesting, because if you look at, say, somebody in a gang, their
Yeah, their
values are
values.
going to be, loyalty,
Mhm.
but still alignment with the bigger vision
Yes.
of whatever the
We
crime
stand
is or
for
whatever.
this, we
Yeah,
stand
that's
for
what we
these
stand.
things.
Yeah.
These are our colors. These are, we stand for this, who we rob, whatever we do.
And so, yeah, whether it's good or bad,
alignment.
they also have these alignment and these boundaries, right?
They
If you're
do.
not going to do this, you can't be part of this.
Yeah.
So I think that these are important conversations to have with yourself.
Yeah.
Of really kind of looking inward. What's my relationship with myself? What's my next layer out? And then the layers kind of continue from there, right? Where it's like, now maybe the next layer is your friends. And then the next layer is
associates.
Yeah. So like people that I work with or acquaintances or, people from my history and going, okay, now with all of these relationships, are they draining me? Are they adding value?
Right.
Are they fulfilling me? Are they safe and connecting? Are they energizing me?
Right.
Are they in alignment with me? Which ones? And it's okay if there's some that are a
to
bit
what degree, like how much are they aligning with me? A little bit, a lot. So the less, the further out they get, the more, the closer to the center they get. And how much am I serving back?
Yes.
In those areas?
Yeah. How am I adding value?
Yeah.
What am I offering this relationship? Because again, for some people, they're givers, and some people are takers. And no judgment either way, but know who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. I know the difference.
Yeah.
I know the difference. And again, going back to aligning with what's important to you, the ones that are in your circle ought to match up.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
To have someone that's in your core that doesn't mirror your values.
Right. And we've had these hard lessons before, right? I mean, I know we both have kind of personal stories. I know I had a friend who, during university, we had a blast together, and she was very outgoing, and I'm really outgoing, but she was like next level to me. And she was the type of person we would go out somewhere and she'd be like, we're going to go on stage or we're going to sing. And I would never do that. I'm not a singer, but I would do that with her. I would do anything she wanted to do. I was like on board. I'm like, let's do it.
Okay.
And, she brought me out of my shell. She brought me into an uncomfortable place of like growth and like realization that I could do really uncomfortable things with somebody who I knew had my back.
Yes.
And
that's huge.
And she was very fun. We ended up, disaligning and not living life the same way.
Yeah.
And we broke up, so to speak, as a friendship, which is okay.
Totally okay.
Like I'm like, I can look back at that and be like, I'm so happy I had her in my life because she added value. And then we went our separate ways because we disaligned, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, because isn't it true? Like, I don't know who said it, but relationships are in your life to teach us lessons.
Yeah.
And so as long as teaching us lessons and we're still growing and evolving and it's somehow growing and evolving ourselves and each other, then great. If no longer is, it's okay to break up. It's okay to move along. Like, that was great. High five. Thanks for knowing you, whatever. Right. But no hard feelings. Like, it's okay to, like, people that need to cling. Like, why do we have the need to cling to relationships that are no longer serving us?
Yes.
Good questions to ask yourself. Or am I clinging to relationships that no longer serve me?
Yeah. And I love that you just said the lessons too, because that's a big piece of it, right? Like, what are the lessons that I've learned in my relationship with myself, in my relationship with my core kind of people, and the ones that are maybe a bit further out, like what are those lessons? Because if we don't know the lessons, how do we integrate them? You can't integrate something you don't know.
Yeah. So take an inventory of like looking back at maybe the history of your life, going, okay, so right now, what do my friendship circles, what do my relationship circles look like? So spouses, partners, kids, family, friends, associates, work, etc. Right? The world, if you want, whatever. And then what are the lessons I've learned over the years from different relationships? What am I integrating? And what am I still learning? And what maybe am I hanging on to that I kind of learned from that I don't need to hang on to anymore? Like, there's this fear of like moving on, but it's part of evolving. Like everything moves and grows, or else it dies.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving that boat forward.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's hard inventory to do that stuff sometimes.
It is. And I know you've had situations in relationships too, where you've had to, maybe put some distance up, some boundaries really because of
disalignment.
Yeah.
Hard to do, right? But I think what we talked about earlier, I'm like, I really recognize now as I'm doing those things, much as it was hard to do, there is a self-love that shows up of like, oh, that's okay to do that. It's okay to love me and have integrity and stand for my values of friendship, kindness, compassion to self first, because self-abandoning isn't kind and compassionate to self.
No,
it's opposite.
Yeah.
So being a doormat for somebody actually isn't serving me.
Yeah.
Right. And raising kids to have those boundaries.
Yes.
Blows my mind.
Yes.
Like, it still blows my mind that my kids have those boundaries.
Yeah. That was the last piece we wanted to talk about, was relationship with kids, right?
Yeah.
That might kind of fit maybe in those circles, or maybe it feels like it's a different kind of circle chart altogether because it's a different kind of relationship.
Right. I guess it depends on how you look at it. But again, the clients say we're talking about, relationship with, because when her partner said, do you love me unconditionally? And so that was the discussion in the office. And she's like, what do you think about that? And I was like, what do you think about that? Because relationships, contracts, it's talking about conditions. Like, is it unconditional? And so she was like, no, I think it's conditional. And I was like, well, tell me about your reasons. And so I was like, well, what could be unconditional? And she was like, maybe my mom and me. My mom probably loves me. I could murder somebody, probably still come visit you in jail. Right. I'm like, so it's a different relationship.
It is.
Relationships, adult relationships have agreements.
Yes.
They have social contracts. They have, fairness and justice. They have all these things. And there's things that we agree to do for each other, for the relationship. And every layer, I think, has, the closer they are, the more concrete the rules, the agreements are, and the further apart they are, kind of unwritten there, but they're still kind of in your mind, these are the agreements. Yeah.
And you're two adult beings with a fully formed prefrontal cortex where you can think clearly and go, I consciously choose to be in relationship with you under this contract. Whereas a parent-child relationship, there is not that. The child does not have that ability to consciously choose you and actively participate in the relationship. It is you. Power. Yeah. It is you taking care of, you nurturing. It is not mutual for a long, if ever. It was a different kind of mutual in terms of like, you get filled back up by like their smile and you're like, it feels mutual, but absolutely, it's different. Yeah.
Because they're under your care.
They are. Right. They're under your care.
So as a parent, your kids, your animals, it's as a nurse, if you're nursing it with it, in a home, whatever, the patients, the kids, they're kind of the same idea that they're under your care. So you have a job to do, which is care for their needs in whatever way they need you to care for their needs.
Yes.
And as kids, right, we're caring for their needs and their needs are changing and we're tuning to their needs changing over time and space. And we're helping them because what is our goal as parents is to help our kids leave the nest. That is our goal, is to raise kids to be independent in the world. So to put all those things, all those, teachings into them so they can leave the nest and be good citizens in their communities, right?
Yeah.
But that's not our partner with partners. I don't want my partner to leave the nest. I want my partner to grow me, evolve me, challenge me, friendships to grow me, evolve me, challenge you.
Yeah.
If it no longer did that though, if it was no longer growing, evolving, challenging, fulfilling, rewarding, there's nothing happening there. There's no longer lessons to be learned there. I don't know that I'd stay in those relationships.
Right. Well, and I mean, that's why like there's times where people decide not to stay married anymore because they're like, you know what? I'm not filled up by you anymore. We're not in the same alignment. We don't want the same vision. This is not collaborative. This is way more draining. I'm putting way more in than you are. Right. So, I mean, there's that inventory some people are doing. And then, just when you were speaking, Alicia, I was making some sad faces. So I was like, I'm kind of reflecting on the fact that a lot of people, like probably at least a third of the population, come from a family system where they were having to fill up their parent.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So it's like, so we're trying to say, as adult beings right now, do an inventory of like, how am I taking care of my child? Like how, like this should not be the other way. If your kids learn from you, like I'll say, my kids, if I'm dysregulated for a moment or sad, I've been sad, right? I've had moments where I'm crying and then they'll come and they'll give me a hug and they'll say, Mom, like, it's okay. I've got this. And that doesn't mean that this is a long standing thing. They're attuning to my acute need of like, hey, I'm going to, notice my mom's. Yeah.
No, that's different for sure.
But that's not, I'm going to go and sleep now in my room and you're going to nurse me for the next week because I can't function at all.
Yeah. Different for sure. Yeah. So they're not caregivers of you. Short-term interventions for sure. Like if I'm sick and daughter brings me a cup of water or whatever, right? Same thing. That's different than them being your caregiver because they're under your care.
Yeah.
That's the job of, that's what we call them, our little parasites.
Yeah.
They're lovely little parasites, but that's the job. What are we feeding our kids?
Yes. And you can even do an inventory if you have several kids, how am I tending to their needs? Because each kid has individual needs, right? Like some are touch, some are quality time, some are, I need you to do this certain thing with me or whatever it is. But like, how am I taking care of those relationships also? Because that will feed your relationship with yourself. Because if you're a parent, part of who you are is being a parent.
That's where you get it from as I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
And what are those kids' needs at different times in their lives?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's a whole nother conversation. I think kids isn't part of when I think of this thing that we're doing here. Relationships. No. I think of kids as a separate bubble because it's a unique relationship bubble.
Yeah.
But we're talking about relationships as an adult.
Yes.
Like, what are your adult relationships look like here and now? Take inventory, starting with self and then work your way out of that bubble or you can use the Brene Brown version of like, in the bubble, here's my values. And so doing values to self, can I do all of those values to myself first?
Yeah.
That's integrity.
Yes.
Compassion, kind, loyal, authentic, whatever, all the things to self first. And then who has earned the right, maybe?
Yeah.
Or who in my world aligns or mirrors those values? Like, how close do they mirror them? That's how close they are to the center.
Yeah.
And the ones that don't mirror, the less they mirror them, the less they are. And then the practicing the boundary of, the less you mirror my values, the less I'm going to give care. What's a better word for that? That sounds harsh, but less I'm going to give attention to your opinion of me.
Yeah.
Your
An investment.
Yeah. Less I'm going to invest. That's a better way to put it. Less I'm going to invest. And that sounds harsh to say it, but it's just true.
It is. And even if you're not an adult, if you're a teenager, because there might be a teen listening to this, right? It's like, you can still do an inventory of your relationship to yourself and your friendships. If anything, that's a really like core time to be doing that, right? Because they're evolving themselves and their friendships is so one. Yeah. I mean, that's just a developmental stage, right? Where it's like, I've learned hopefully the core values and morals from my parents, but now everything else is.
Asking, do those align?
Yeah.
And if they're not, why am I hanging out? Like, that'd be another whole fun topic with teenage brains.
Yeah.
We'll do a whole teenage.
We will at some point.
We got to do a teenage one.
But at this one right now, I think our end kind of point is just take an inventory of these relationships that you have with yourself and with others. Do I consciously choose these? How are they filling me up or draining me? Yeah. And really just sit down and evaluate that.
Yeah. And you could use Stan's words like, what are we doing and why?
Yeah. Keep it simple. Yeah. I love that. He says, who am I? What am I doing? What do I really want?
Yes.
You can ask that to yourself every day.
Oh, everything actually.
Yes. Who am I?
What am I doing?
I don't know.
What am I doing? I forgot.
Yes. What do I really want? I don't know.
Food and shopping.
Yeah. Oh,
we digress.
Totally.
Cheers.
As I end. This is the cup I made, Alicia. I don't know who's on like actual YouTube, but this is one of our cups. Yeah. So that's kind of our take home, I think, right? Is there anything else we want to say with this? This is an important one.
It's so important. Like, we're kind of played, but it's so important for your health, for your integrity, for, self-regulation. We're talking about that last time. We're going to do co-regulation. Like, to co-regulate, they can't be on the external. Someone that's in the exterior can't co-regulate you because there's not safety to do that. Yeah. So I'm only going to people that co-regulate there. So this is a foundation piece for all talks about relationships we're ever going to do.
Yes, it is. So take an inventory and be kind to yourself. And it's okay if relationships are going to end, if you're like, like, man, this is really tough. Or maybe I need to go to therapy with my partner or whoever, because I'm like, we're struggling, or my best friend. I mean, we see couples that are best friends as opposed to like intimate partners, but just take that time to actually evaluate where you're at.
Yeah. And be honest about that.
Yeah.
And be graceful. Yeah. Like, give grace to be like, it's okay that it doesn't align anymore. That's okay. Yeah. You could have different alignments of like, I still value you as a human being. I value human beings that disagree with me. I value human beings. Great. I love the flavors and the colors of the world. Like, I value that. Doesn't mean we have to be in our course together. And I give you the freedom and the grace to walk
away. And sometimes it is, I know, just as an end note, because I know you and I both have this experience where both of our husbands with different relationships kind of said, why are you holding on to this relationship? And it was at different times for both of us. We were like, well, because like for me, I was like, well, because we were friends and because we were friends in high school. And he was like, yeah, but you guys don't, she doesn't call you anymore. You call her all the time. She doesn't call you back. And I'm like, I guess there's a point where even though I love relationships and I want to keep putting into them, if I'm not getting anything back, I guess it's time to
or they cut that line. Actually, what they stand for now is so different than what I stand for today. And that's okay. Yeah. I wish them well, love them, wish them peace and love in their life, but it doesn't align. So I'm not going to invest there. I use that word, which is my tattoo. Like, invest your love. Is where you invest your love is where you invest your life. Yes. Investments are a big deal.
Yeah. And I always use the analogy of a business. So I think of like, if you're starting a business, or if you think of your friendships as a business, what are you growing? What is the business? What are you guys investing in to grow this business? If you all have different businesses and you're all doing different things.
But
if you're like, well, we all want to be in business together, but we all think it's something different. It's like, well, that's not going to be very successful.
No, it's not going to work, but I wish you well.
Yes.
Thanks for
go on your own venture. Love you. Peace out. Boundaries are sexy.
Boundaries are sexy.
That's right.
I love it. That's my mantra.
Boundaries are sexy as fuck. There you go.
Power that.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been a slice.
Awesome. Always a slice.
Later.
Later.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We're really glad you're here with us on this journey.
The best way to support this podcast is to subscribe and give it a 5-star review.
See you next time.
This has been a Bread Dog Studios production.